Hi, I'm Diana Montford, the world's first transgender television journalist. It's on the internet, look it up. It is, actually. But anyway, that's how I found out. No, I already knew. But anyway, born male became female. I have to say that because we trans folk need our history. Boom. Okay, my guest is our wonderful friend, Tom Lisanti, prolific author who actually invented a genre, analyzing a soap opera, and telling us all about the minutiae of producing that particular soap. He's done Ryan's Hope, and this is his book about Texas. Soap which lasted, 3 years or so?
Yeah, just a little less than 3 years.
And it was a daytime soap meant to rival the super famous, what was the name of that thing at night? Anyway, Dallas, yeah. And sadly, it only lasted 3 years. Texas. He also wrote this wonderful book called Dueling Harlows. There were two biopics in 1965 about the famous 1930s actress Jean Harlow. One starred the great Carroll Baker and one starred the great Carol Lynley. And Carol Lynley's birthday is today, is it not?
It was February 13th, so it was 4 days ago.
Yes, we are shooting this in 2026 on February 17th, in case you were interested.
Yeah.
And are we going to talk about Carol Lynley?
Yes. Yes, with Carol Lynley, I discovered her when my parents took me to the Westbury Drive-In on Long Island in May of 1973 for my 12th birthday to see the Poseidon Adventure. And for some reason, I was just fascinated by her, and I asked my mom after the movie ended who played the pretty pop singer, the hippie pop singer. And that was Carol Lynley. She was in that vampire movie I told you not to watch, They Gave You Nightmares, which was The Night Stalker, which I had seen a couple of months prior, but I didn't put two and two together.
Well, she's underutilized in The Night Stalker.
Right, yes. And I became a big fan of hers, and I created a scrapbook. I would pretend to be sick, so I get to stay home during the day.
I do that to watch Jean Harlow movies, yeah.
To watch her on the Hollywood Squares or whatever game show or talk show she was in. And then in the 90s, I did an article on her, and a friend said, for a magazine, why don't you send it to her? Maybe she'll give you an interview. And she did. And she really is the catalyst for me writing all these books, because that article ran in Film Facts magazine, and from interviewing her, I started interviewing lots of other 1960s starlets, and after kind of like going my way through all the starlets, I now write about soap operas. But Dueling Harlows was a special book because, like Diana said, there was two movies made about Jean Harlow. At the time, neither one got good reviews, but as I was researching Carol Lynley's career, the backstories of the making of the movies and the conflict between the two producers. Bill Sargent produced the Carol Lynley one. Right. Joseph E. Levine produced the bigger budgeted Paramount with Carroll Baker. And these guys went at it back and forth in the press, saying derogatory things about each other.
They almost came to blows.
Academy Awards, threatening lawsuits. And, and Carol Baker and Carol Lynley just merrily went along.
And they were friends. Poor Carol Lynley has gone home.
Yeah, yes.
She's died.
Yeah, they actually didn't meet until the 90s, and they became best buddies until Carol Lynley died. But with Carol Lynley, unfortunately for her, some of her movies that did not do well with the critics, like 1961's The Last Sunset, was a Western with Rock Hudson and Kirk Douglas and Dorothy Malone.
It was the all-gay production.
And it was directed by Robert Aldrich. And then Bunny Lake is Missing from Otto Preminger.
Which is great.
Right.
It's great.
But at the time, the critics sort of like...
It was too esoteric.
Yeah, right. It was like they got mixed reviews. They weren't... Last Sunset was a big box office hit. Bunny Lake wasn't. But years later, they got more of a revisionist look. And people think now critics look at them and say they're much better than what people thought back in the time. Now, and her Harlow is a perfect example.
I just want to illustrate how versatile Carol Lynley was. The other night I watched a film called The Stripper, which starred Joanne Woodward as the stripper. It was meant for Marilyn, but Marilyn died, so they gave it to Joanne Woodward. Playing a stone-assed virgin in that same film is the beautiful, perfect Carol Lynley. 3 years later, she's playing Fast and Loose Jean Harlow. How's that for versatility? And then 10 years after The Stripper, she's playing a hippie chick singer. So, I mean, this woman could play anything.
Yes, she once said to a reporter that sometimes she would wish she gave into typecasting. She'd have been more famous and richer, but then she turned around and said, however, I played murderesses, nuns, whores, and neurotics. So
pick one.
Yeah. So if she would have gave into typecasting, she wouldn't have had the opportunity to play all these type of different roles. But her Harlow was cheaply done, 8 days, black and white, in a process
called... But that
makes
it look very 30s.
Right.
So it works.
It was Electronovision, where it was shot like a live stage play with cameras all over the place, and the director just picking the angle he wanted right then and there from the control booth. When it came out in 1965, it had a very grainy look to it. It looked like a kinescope from like watching a soap opera on kinescope.
Nolan Miller did a great job with the costumes.
Yes, Nolan
and
Miller.
whoever the hairdresser was great with it.
Yes, Westmoreland. One of the Westmoreland brothers was the
Westmore.
Westmore. I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. Westmore. Well, no, he wasn't. He was makeup. I forgot who the hairdresser was. Who did her wigs.
But whoever did them was fabulous.
Right. And so looking back at it now, when you look at the Harlows, the Carroll Baker one is beautiful. It's in color.
Yeah.
It's very
Carol looks great.
But it doesn't really stick to the facts. The Carol Lynley one, when you watch it now, has a 30s feel to it. You feel like you're actually watching Jean Harlow.
Well, yes and no, because they do a Marilyn on her. They have a run off to New York and study acting. Harlow never did that, as you can see from her films.
But the Carol Lynley one, though, does say she wasn't a virgin when she got to Hollywood. You know, they talk about her husband.
Yeah. Her father was a dentist.
She didn't like wearing a bra. That comes out in the Lynley version.
First you stick me in this straight jacket, then
Yes. She also was a crew gal, and they bring that up
when she died, the extras on Saratoga, her final film, they had no money. It was the Depression. Sent flowers.
Yeah, and also
she always gave them donuts and coffee and all that on her nickels.
Right, and both of them highlight her marriage to Paul Byrne, who died mysteriously. But with the Carol Lynley one, they do bring in his common law wife, which was suspect. Yes, played the part. The Carol Baker one doesn't even go there.
And you know, Peter Lawford is too good looking.
Yes, he's too good. Yes,
strong. Too all wrong.
Hurt Hatfield plays Paul Byrne in the Lynley version, and he actually got very good reviews. And the other thing about the Carol Lynley Harlow, which she told me is what she remembers the most, was Judy Garland was originally cast to play Mama Jean, her mother, and she rehearsed with Judy Garland for 3 weeks, and then Judy came to her and said, "Carol, this is going to be a piece of shit. Though I love you, I'm out of here." And off Carol, and she did. She quit, and Ginger Rogers stepped in. Carol said,
Ginger Rogers' last movie.
Yeah, and she did. Carol said she was shocked. She did a fabulous job, and actually, Ginger Rogers does come off more like a grasping Mama Jean, where Angela Lansbury and the other Harlow is more like a friendish. Yes. Yeah, she's not as grasping as.
And they all believe the Irving Shulman book, which painted Mother Jean as a moron, whereas Mother Jean was the world's greatest momager. Eat your heart out, Terry Shields. She was really good.
Yes.
No.
Yes. So this movie didn't do anything with Carol Lynley. Luckily, Otto Preminger was there with Bunny Lake is Missing, and off the minute this wrapped, she was off to London to work with Noel Coward, Laurence Olivier, Keira Dullea, Martita Hunt, and that kind of revitalized. When that came out, even though it was mixed reviews and it didn't do good at the box office, Carol won the best reviews of her life.
And it was very respected among film critics.
Yes. And nowadays, it's considered one of the one of the most underrated movies of the 1960s.
Well, she was always doing good work. The problem is, maybe it was too good. You know, like if she'd done Schlocko movies.
Yeah. Yes, more cultish. And The Shuttered Room came next after Bunny Lake, and that was very good. But a lot of her movies got caught up in studio politics. She did it for Seven Arts. They merged with Warner Brothers, and it sat on she filmed it in early '66. It didn't show up in America until January of '68. It was a lot of her movies got.
What film was that?
The Shuttered Room.
I've never heard of that.
That's based with it's supposedly based on an H.P. Lovecraft story, where she is married to Gig Young and she returns to her family home with something weird in the attic, It's very stylishly done. It's a thriller, and unfortunately, if it got released in '66, back to back with Bunny Lake is Missing, I think Carol might have been in the running for Rosemary's Baby, but it came out after that.
I think Carol is too intelligent looking. It wouldn't have worked with her because she would have seen through this crap at the beginning.
True.
Whereas Mia Farrow's like, oh, what time is it here? So, yeah.
Well, Carol does play that blank-faced.
Yeah, but Carol she looked smart, and that's a problem.
Yeah. So that's what this book is, and then it also includes another interview with Lindsay Bloom, who played Jean Harlow.
Oh, yes, she's wonderful, Lindsay Bloom.
In 1970s movie about Hughes and Harlow, Angels in Hell. Unfortunately, Carroll Baker gave her blessing for the book, but she was done talking about Harlow. She wrote about it in her memoir in the 80s, and doesn't never want us to talk about
the
Harlow
memoir's
ever
called
again.
Baby Doll, and it's excellent. You should find it. It's out of print, but you can find it on Amazon. Baby Doll by Carroll Baker. It's a terrific memoir.
So, and actually, McFarland and Company published this, and I think I have 11 books, and this is my favorite cover. I thought they did a fabulous job with the cover. Really, and they both look great on it and stuff.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Carol, when I interviewed Carol for this, then I also did a sort of a biography or a career retrospective on her, and
Carol Lynley,
and she unfortunately passed away during the process.
That's terrible. Right. And I know it must have hurt you since you loved her so.
Yes, and also I was scheduled to speak with her for a third time, and she passed away suddenly before that had to happen. That happened and stuff. So I went from starlets to soaps.
Varlets.
And Ryan's Hope actually was the first soap opera book, and these two came out in 2026, in 2025. So these two came out pretty much simultaneously, different publishers, McFarland Company and BearManor Media.
And thanks to you, I met so many interesting people like Carol Hollenbeck, like Eileen Kristen, like Louise Schaefer.
Both of them from Ryan's Hope.
And Louise Schaefer and I killed 2 hours on the phone just chatting.
Yeah, Louise is wonderful.
Yeah.
And the funny story about Louise Schaefer, who played this media maven, I interviewed this guy, Michael Corbett, and he said he would come to he would get to the studio, they would do rehearsals, and this woman would be there in glasses and her hair all like in a scarf, and she'd have a coffee, and then she'd be gone, and then they would go to film, and this beautiful woman named Grace, he said she looked like Grace Kelly, would come through to the door, and he said to her, Louise, I goes, you're so spot on. I guess, and you never come into the rehearsals in the morning. And she's like, honey, I'm the one with the big glasses in my hair. And she's a beautiful woman, but they really knew how to make her on the show really stand out. And
she joked that if people want to know the miracle of makeup,
yes.
you should see her before and after.
Yes. So Ryan's Hope I wrote about because it was the soap opera I watched pretty much from 1980
well, that's
until.
What got you into soaps.
Yes, Ryan's Hope got me into soaps, and then I stumbled onto Texas. I didn't like General Hospital at the time. I was probably like the only college kid around that didn't like Luke and Laura. Boring. I got hooked on Texas. I had a
problem with Luke raping Laura and then they get married.
Yeah, right. I know. So when they asked me to do a second soap opera book, I said, well, probably the only one I could really do it on the whole thing is Texas, and which I did. And I interviewed a lot of people, including the co-creator, Joyce Corrington. And again, this is another story, like this, what went on behind the scenes was probably more interesting than the actual soap itself.
And that was the problem. Yeah. That's why it only lasted 3 years.
Yeah. And
we have discussed this before, but there was a Mexican family working on the ranch, and suddenly, just like that, they became wasps. Same actors.
Yes.
But they go from Rodriguez to Parker or something.
Yes. Joyce Corrington said her and her husband Bill submitted the Bible for their show, and to Fred Silverman, who was the head of NBC at the time.
God in those days.
It came back with 2 notes: more young people, no Mexicans, with an exclamation point.
Yeah. No Mexicans. Makes total sense.
Yeah. So they kept their first names of the family, and they just renamed the last name Deckers. So the Decker family.
Now they're German. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, that cleans it up, right?
And which is funny because I interviewed some of the Deckers, and the actors had no clue that that was even a thing. You know, a lot of the actors didn't know what was going on behind the scenes between.
Well, that's usual.
Right. NBC did Texas. It was a Procter and Gamble soap.
It was an hour long, wasn't it?
Yes, it was an hour long. They put it up against General Hospital, just
that
as
was a huge.
right,
And they
Luca
had
Laura.
one of the stars of General Ken Schreiner on Texas,
Yes.
playing a completely different character. Nobody, what the hell is going on?
Yes. They from Another World. They stole Beverly McKinsey, who played Iris Bancroft, the most popular villain on the show. Joyce said their big mistake was they made Beverly the heroine of Texas.
And her son is very forthcoming in your book. He's very.
Yes, I interviewed Beverly
Well,
passed
he's a
away.
director now.
Yeah, her son Scott shared stories and stuff. But Joyce said that was their biggest mistake. And for Ken Schreiner, he wasn't part of the Bible. NBC swayed him away from ABC.
And he was a huge hit.
Yes.
On General Hospital. It was the
Mm-hmm.
only reason people watched.
Yes. And I interviewed Ken Schreiner, and he said, though he loved being in New York for a year, it was the biggest mistake of his life. The storylines, they just threw him into various things.
He had no real connection
Right.
to the
Story. Yes, he didn't. So after a year, he went back to General Hospital. But and then they lost Beverly McKinsey, and new writers came in. So it was a constant turnaround until they had a shot at the end with Pam Long took over. Mm-hmm. She was on the show as Ashley Linden. She took over as head writer, and she started to really reshape the show. But then NBC in December of '82 pulled the plug on Texas, and they pulled the plug on the Doctors. So they killed 2 soaps in the same month, which really made the audience very irate.
Well, people fall in love with their soaps, and they don't like. These people are their families.
Yes.
And you just make them disappear.
Yes.
It's not going to.
Yes, and that's what problems with some of these head writers would come in. Same thing with the book I'm working on. Well, it's finished. Another World. During that same period, 78 to 82, NBC at the time thought playwrights and novelists with no soap opera writing experience would make great head writers, but they don't. They come in. They want to write their characters, and they write off fan favorites. They drop storylines, and all of a sudden, you're watching a show, and now half of it is all these new characters that came out of the heads of these new head writers.
And sometimes they're quite pretentious, and they basically shoot over the head of the audience.
Yes, and people don't. If you have to slowly introduce new characters to soaps, you just can't wipe out half the cast and throw in new people because the audience has definitely.
I'm sorry, John. Your wife Marcia died in a plane crash, but here's your new wife.
Yes. So Texas had a rough go, but the people who worked on it, especially the actors, loved it because they filmed out in a huge studio in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. One side was Texas, the other side was Another World. They were pretty much stranded out there all day. They would have a limo take them back and forth to Manhattan.
But it was sort of like a bus limo, like they pick up several people. Yeah.
And the young cast was 1980, 81. It was the start of the 80s. The young cast all meshed. They had
sexual revolution throbbing all over the place.
They had summer houses in the Hamptons, and
boys here, girls there. But
and so I heard lots of stories about the wild times in the Hamptons.
Wild times at Ridgemont High. Yeah.
Yes, and there was a bar on the Upper East Side where one of the actresses, Barbara Rucker, her husband owned it. It was called Hurley's. And the
that
cast
was very famous.
Yes, it was very models, actors, sports guys.
Yes.
Steve Hurley, Barbara had passed away, but I interviewed Steve and about Texas and Another World people there, and they all paid. He said nobody got a free drink. They all paid. But
that was also a point of honor. You didn't want to take advantage.
Right.
You know?
Yes. And so it was interesting, and that's doing Texas and hearing about the Another World people. And I did watch Another World from 1980 to 82. I thought it might be interesting to do a book on what was happening on the other side of the studio, and that's the upcoming book, Another World. That's hopefully come out this year. Maybe.
Are you really doing a book on nighttime soaps, or was that a joke?
That's still in the preliminary stages. Mm-hmm. And so Another World starts with what happened with Another World because it became the first and only 90-minute soap. So in 1979, and it's the build-up to what happened at NBC with two failed soaps called Lovers and Friends and For Richer for Poorer, how NBC decided instead of trying to fill that half-hour slot with another new show, let's expand Another World
And
to
that
90
was
minutes.
a huge mistake. People, they have stuff to do, even if they're housewives.
Right.
They can give a half hour to a show, but
Even
they
an
cannot
hour.
sit
They're
there for an hour and a half.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a TV movie a day. And that's what the cast. So I interviewed a lot of the cast members who worked on it. And they said literally we did a TV movie, which was 90 minutes back in the day, a day. And so that didn't work out.
How did they learn the dialogue?
Well,
that's the problem.
yes, there were a lot of dialogue. There were a lot of new characters added to expand the storylines, and it just didn't work. They were going to push it back to 60 minutes when Paul Rausch was the executive producer and co-creator of Lovers and Friends and For Richer for Poorer. He said, I got a new one, Texas. And they decided to launch Texas on Another World. So for the summer of 1980.
And that was a real problem.
That was a big problem for Texas. That's another thing that hurt Texas, because when people tuned in to Texas at 3 p.m. in August, they thought they would be watching a soap from the first episode.
Yeah.
They didn't realize the soap had already started on Another World.
And
it
if
had been
you
running
didn't
for 6
watch
weeks.
Another World, like if you were in
didn't-
school until 3
Right.
o'clock, you were,
you didn't know what the heck was going on. So
Right.
you came into the show in the middle of storylines, and it was never explained. And the other thing is they spent a lot of money shooting on location
Was it? Yeah,
in
and that was
Houston.
stupid.
And they kind of used a lot of it on Another World. So when people started to watch Texas, a lot of that footage didn't
People
show up in
riding
Texas.
horses and
Yeah,
all
it
that,
didn't show
yeah.
up. So yeah, poor Texas didn't. It wasn't well planned out.
The stars weren't right, you know.
I mean, yes. I mean, and then, the first Joyce and Bill, they unceremoniously got fired after 6 months after creating the show and after being stolen from CBS from Search for Tomorrow, which they really revitalized Search for Tomorrow. They were there for 2 years. And, she always felt that they deserved a chance to try to create.
When was this business ever fair to anyone?
Right, yeah. They thought, well, if they would have told us what they thought was wrong, we could have tried to fix it, but they just fired them.
Yeah. Anyway, that is life, folks.
Yes.
And now people in the mainstream are learning. In those days, that was shocking. Today, business, any kind of business, is so cruel. Now they understand what all the show business people went through 50 years ago.
But what I've learned from doing Ryan Soap, Texas, and Another World is, yes, Gail Colby was the executive producer who fired, part of the firing. They got over it, and Gail hired them for something else, and that's what happens. I've learned in the soap world with writers and stuff. They get fired, they show up on another soap, they get rehired.
In politics, they tell us never make such an enemy of someone that you can't turn around and be his friend again when it's expedient.
Yeah. Well, exactly, and that's exactly when I've been learning from these soap opera books. They pop up on another show with the same people that they didn't get along with, but it's a job, and you just keep,
Well, Lila Swift went from Dark Shadows to Ryan Soap.
Right. And won an Emmy. Was the first female director.
Yes, and she was brilliant.
Yes. She
Harsh
had
but brilliant.
Yes, harsh. Yes. Very, yes. Of all the directors that the actors have talked about, she was probably one of the harshest.
But she had to be because she was a woman.
Yes.
Anyway. So now, where can people get your books?
They're available online at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble. You can get them, well, not from BearManor Media, but McFarland Company, directly from McFarland.
And this book, it not only talks about the Jean Harlow biopics, it also talks about the inner workings of Hollywood. If you want to know how films are produced then and now, it hasn't changed that much. Get this book.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, I thought that was, like I said, the interesting part of the two Harlows was what was going on behind the scenes. Yeah. And it was...
And poor Carroll Baker was scarred for life by, not physically, but emotionally by Josephine Levine's craziness.
Yeah, he had her blackballed from filming. The studios wouldn't hire her. I think she did a guest spot in a George Hamilton movie, like a cameo, and then she went to Europe.
And had a great time doing films
Italy.
in Rome.
Yeah, in Italy and stuff. And
she was very happy.
Yes, and then came back in the early 80s and had a bit of a revival of her career.
As a characteress. She played the mother of poor Dorothy Stratton in Star 80 by Peter Bogdanovich.
Yes.
Which was actually a mistake because the real mother had a thick Swiss accent or something like that. Yeah. But and she was going to sue because she did not give permission. The mother. Mm-hmm. Whatever. But and Peter Bogdanovich didn't give permission either.
Right.
So that was
Yeah,
a
you have
problem.
to. Yes, you have to be careful about that.
But anyway, yeah, you should buy these books because this especially is very fast. It's really good. It tells you all about. And my mother was just around that time. You know, you got the inside dope.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It was brutal. At 20th, it was fucked like crazy.
Yeah.
No, when Cleopatra came out, it was like the end.
Yes, Cleopatra almost killed the studio.
No shit, really? Yeah, I know, I remember. But anyway, yeah, hey, Mom, I punch Liz Taylor in the face when you see me. No, don't. But oddly enough, my mother was a Liz Taylor fan. But anyway, buy this book, buy these books. So what's next on the agenda?
Again, there could be a book about primetime serial, soaps in the 1980s, but ones
I would love that. I would love that.
But ones that didn't become, not the dynasties and the Dallases, the lesser ones that only lasted a year or two.
Why not do it about the winners?
Because that's not my specialty. I always do it about the
underdogs.
The underdogs, yes. And the other one might be a book.
Well, the Colbys had Charlton Heston, Barbara Stanwyck, that English actress.
Stephanie Beecham, who was fabulous as Sable. But yeah, but it didn't. It only lasted
You would think.
You're right. It only lasted 2 seasons.
Barbara Stanwyck and Charlton Heston, and goes, yay.
And the other one my agent really wants me to do is a book that was based on a magazine article I did. I called it, "If It's Not Tuesday, It Must Be Sandra, Connie, Carol, Yvette, Sue, or Diane," about do
that. It would be a great book.
Yes, it's about...
And it's a companion volume to your early book about 60 Starlets.
Yes, it's about Tuesday Weld, Sandra Dee, Carol Lynley, Connie Stevens, Diane McBain, Yvette Mimieux, and Sue Lyon, how from 1958 to 1965, they were the it girls of the time. Basically, they were all thanks to Carroll Baker and Baby Doll. She kind of gave birth to a litter of Lolitas, which I'll steal from Marianne Sinclair from her book called Hollywood Lolitas. And
we have 44 seconds.
Yes. And then how they, at that point, but none of them became movie stars.
Here's
superstars.
Here's our superstar. My guest has been superstar author Tom Lisanti, who's written Dueling Harlows and Texas, about the soap opera Texas. I'm Diana Montford. This has been the Diana Montford Show. I love you even if no one else loves you. I'll see you next time. Bye.